Hello everyone and welcome back to Timberborn! This is episode 6 of the Spillage series. In the last episode we drastically expanded our production zone. We are now in the process of making bot parts. We also have the refinery that we're working on. We're going to go with the biofuel recipe that uses potatoes since it is the most efficient out of all of them. And we actually do have enough science now to unlock the bot part assemblers. These require a decent amount of planks, and unfortunately we're running a little bit low right now, but we can get those unlocked and then start constructing those. We also have 15 vacant jobs. Thankfully those are all contained in these buildings on this side. The second hauling post is the lowest priority. We can probably also lower some of these builders' huts. We also worked on setting up another tree farm. For now we're using birch trees because we don't have the bad water seep figured out. Since during a bad tide this water seep will produce bad water and it could potentially kill all the trees. So I don't want to invest in too large of trees right now. The oak trees are much more efficient, but it takes 30 days for them to grow up versus these birch trees only take 7 days. Seems like we're doing fantastic on food. In fact, we've collected almost everything there is here. For now, we can pause one of these farmhouses since we do have a good amount of food reserves. Although it looks like about half of those are berries, so I might want to actually rethink that. But first, what we can do is unlock the beehive. It only requires 400 science, so we can get that set up. We need to mark where we actually want to have those beehives by unplanting some of these crops. Since we are suffering a plank shortage, we can at least temporarily get some of these small piles constructed and have them set to wood, set to obtain, and prioritized by haulers. That way the workers in these lumber mills don't need to walk quite as far to get some logs, and that should keep them running much more efficiently. We can reduce how many workers are in the centrifuge and then do the same in the refinery. We are going to start having some beavers that get injured. We can maybe pause one of these buildings and then have them focus on getting one of these bot assemblers constructed. We also don't necessarily need all these inventors huts working since we did set up the observatory in the last episode. And on the bright side we have some trees that are starting to grow up, but unfortunately I didn't actually place any lumberjack flags down, so we'll need to unmark a few of these trees to be planted, and then in the meantime have a lumberjack flag that's a little bit offset from where ideally I want to place it. And then we also need to make sure we have all them marked to be chopped down. We are slowly pumping the bad water out of this water seep, and you can see the irrigation effects are spreading, not very quickly, but they are spreading. And then something else I want to tackle in today's video is getting a second district set up. We are near the north side of the map, and we already have some zipline stations that go a good chunk of the way, but I want to get us across this bad water river and then have another district center set up right on top of this hill. This will give us access to some geothermal vents, and then we'll also have some water sources. There's a water seep if we look down here. This one has suffered the same fate where there's some bad water that came out of it during the bad tide. And then we have a second one over here. Looks like there's actually some trees and some blueberries. But the beavers of this new district are going to be completely dependent on the beavers of the original district for a while. They're not really going to be able to grow any food unless we make some 3x3 grids and then irrigate that land and plant some crops. And maybe down here would be a good place to do that. But first things first, we need to get some bridges going across. I only want to have to unlock one bridge, which means it needs to be an even number of tiles across. This one will not do. I think this one should be fine though. So we can get a 5x1 unlock for 1000 science, and then place 2 bridges down. We can get the district center placed down, and then we're going to also need to wait until we have the district crossing constructed before we can send any beavers over here. In the meantime, we can help them get some of the basics set up. We'll get some storages and housing. But we're going to make sure we don't connect it into this path, otherwise the beavers of the original district are going to try and live there. And then we can set up the district crossing somewhere near the end of this zip line, and then down the road we can get another zip line that goes across, getting us closer to the district center. And then we're going to stick with some basics, just having a medium tank for water, and then getting a warehouse, and let's see what crops we can actually spare. Seems like carrots are the thing we're doing the best on, so we can have that set to carrots. Then we can get a pile set up, set that to wood, and then also have a small pile set to planks. As long as we have those basics set up for the second district, then they should be able to start producing some things for themselves. We have some geothermal vents they can utilize, and then some of these dead oak trees. While they won't be able to regrow, they do provide a good amount of logs. There's 8 of them in each of these trees. And then soon we can try and get them over here and start pumping some water out of this water seep. And I think I see what one of the problems is. Our power supply is massively undersized. We're producing just under half of what we actually need, so all these buildings are running super inefficiently. We can start pausing some of the ones that we don't need, And then we also need to place down some levees to make sure these water wheels are running as efficiently as possible. Upstream, this one's providing 120 HP, but then we're down to 80 since we don't have these sides blocked off. We have a lot of these storages that are unassigned. For now, we're just going to have them set to grilled potatoes, but once we start getting some more of the different foods, we can switch those around. We have our first bot, so we can switch the lumber mill from beavers to bots because we're so short on planks at the moment. And then we can also continue to place down some beehives. We have one that we placed down so far, but this should help us yield some more crops. We are also doing better on jobs. We only have 10 or 11 that are vacant, so we can turn this efficient farmhouse back on. We also have enough science that we can sever this connection and then get the district crossing unlocked for 600 science. And then as soon as they construct this, we can make sure that we have enough water and food for the beavers, and then start getting some beavers transferred over to the second district. We can also start the process of getting some more water wheels set up, but we do need to make sure that we can actually connect them all in. As long as you place down one piece of dynamite, then we can have the power shaft stretch around here. And then ideally I would like to have some windmills adjacent to each of these water wheels, but unfortunately those take a good amount of planks, and we don't have quite enough at the moment, and we're not able to capture excess power. If we get some gravity batteries unlocked and placed down, then we can utilize that extra power. Although having some windmills is going to be nice during this drought, it's 7 days long, so we're going to be running drastically short on power, unfortunately. Looks like they did finish constructing the district crossing, so we can begin the migration process, and we can hold 12 beavers per household. So let's just send 10 adult beavers over to this district, and then we need to put these guys to work immediately. Let's set up some trees to be chopped down, and it looks like they're bringing some carrots back over to this district crossing, so they're being quite generous in giving the carrots back to them. You're running short on district crossing workers, so we'll need to balance some jobs. But first we can focus on this district. We need to get a few more of the lumberjack flags constructed, and then we can actually get over here to get access to some berries. It's going to be a little bit difficult to get over there. We'll have to use a bunch of stairs to get up and down, so maybe we hold off on that for now. Our logs are starting to run a little bit short. It might be worth switching one of these lumberjack flags to be a bot. That way he can be chopping these trees around the clock. We also want to add in a storage and have that set to biofuel so that he doesn't need to run too far away in order to get some biofuel. Now it doesn't really seem like there's a great spot for us to place down some of the gravity batteries. We don't have a whole lot of elevation change. Right here might be a good idea, but even then it's not that high up. I know that we can add some platforms to raise it in elevation, so that might be what we end up doing. We can place down a couple mini lodges and then also get our last triple lodge right here. We can continue to go vertical, but at least on this elevation, this will be the last one. And we can start the process of raising up these platforms, and then soon we can get some gravity batteries placed down. We'll set up a temporary power connection going right through here, and then we're going to go up 2 full sets of triple platforms. So we'll have the stairs going up. I'm going to have some single platforms on top. That way the beavers can actually walk underneath to construct the gravity batteries. And then I'm going to wait just a little bit so that I can unlock some overhangs, and then we can have those going off to the side so we can add some additional gravity batteries down the road. And we are at the point where we have normal level priority jobs that are completely vacant, so we should at least pause some of these. Oh, and I forgot to pause these water pumpers, so now we have a drought going on here. Unfortunately, we're going to lose pretty much all of our crops since we still have just under 4 days left, so that was an oversight on my part. Fortunately, we do have these other crops. They're going to get us through these tough times, which means we can pause some of these jobs, and that does help out quite a bit. So now we only have 9 vacant jobs as opposed to 20 something. And then we can also place down a couple more lumberjack flags since we have a lot of trees that we need to chop down. And lastly, we can detonate all this dynamite. And we are also experiencing a bit of a water shortage for them. We need to bump this district crossing up. We'll have 4 workers and have it set to high priority because we can't afford to have these beavers thirsty. And then we can place down some warehouses. These are mainly going to serve as a crossing so we can get access to this geothermal vent. And it's going to yell at us, but we're going to leave that for now. And then we can get a couple lumber mills set up. Those will help with our plank shortage, and then we can start placing down some buildings like platforms and stairs that do require planks, since these guys only have 1 plank in this district at the moment. And of course, you stranded a beaver. We can get that guy freed up, collect those resources, and then place that last staircase back down. Unless they decide they want to construct stuff inside here instead. Now we are actually dropping in food precipitously. We only have 75 carrots, 10 sunflower seeds, and then 120 potatoes. So the crops from here are not enough to sustain both colonies. Thankfully we do have some berry reserves, but we need to immediately pivot to start thinking about getting some more farms set up. One thing we could look at doing is expanding how many farmers we have, since it seems like we have some crops that aren't being picked, and that's probably just because we don't have enough workers in here. This is not a permanent solution, but for now we can get another farmhouse set up, and then as long as we get some stairs placed right next to it, then these guys should be able to reach a good amount of the crops. Since we do have some explosives, we have about 35, we can look at leveling some of this area, since the water irrigation effects spread about 14 tiles from where the water is. So we have 13 vacant jobs in this district, plus we have one bot job that's vacant, but we should make sure that we see what jobs we have lowered on the priority list. I know I have one builder's hut and there should be one hauling post that are both lowest. So that'll be 10 jobs that we are okay with being vacant. And then we have all the inventor's huts paused, so those ones are all lower, but that does not count. And then we have a couple lumberjack flags that are lower. So all in all, that looks like there's 16 jobs that we are okay with being vacant. So as long as we're below 16, then we're fine. But fortunately the drought is over. We had plenty of water left, about 1700. We do want to unpause this large water pump, and then soon we can also unpause the farmhouse. But we're going to be pretty close to 16 vacant jobs, so we need to also do some rearranging once again. We do have some builders who are sitting around, so we can pause 2 of these builders' huts for now, and that should free up enough jobs so we can unpause these without worrying about having any jobs sitting too vacant. So we do have the power shafts all set up, so as long as we get the gravity batteries unlocked, we can start placing them down. But we want to take advantage of all the space that we have. We could do the 5x1 or the 6x1 overhangs. I think that it's probably worth doing the 5x1 just because it's about half the science that this one is, and we'd only get an additional gravity battery if we went with this one. Unfortunately, we are still short on science, so we'll have to wait just a little bit before we can unlock it. But if we know that the 5x1 is going to look something like this, that means that we can fit 2 gravity batteries on the left side, and then there's going to be one that overlaps between this platform and the overhang. So instead we could place down 1 gravity battery right here, but then we wouldn't be able to connect it in unless we put a power shaft here, and then we'd also be using some additional science. Plus we also have the water wheels that are spinning back up, so they're going to provide some additional power for now. Which means I'm probably going to wait until we have the next announcement of either a bad tide or a drought, and then I'll get those overhangs set up with the gravity batteries. Pivoting back to our second district, it looks like we have some of these beavers are no longer able to chop down any trees, so we can remove them. And then it looks like we also don't have anything for these guys to work on. We have these beavers who are sitting in these lumber mills, but we don't actually have quite enough planks. We're pretty close, so soon we can turn them back on, but for now we'll wait. I do have a couple lumberjack flags set up over here, and then we're going to make our way across and then place down some dynamite, and then that will allow the bad water to drain out of this area, and so this water seep can turn back on, and the irrigation effects should spread out. And these beavers have nothing fun to do. We can at least get a campfire set up, and then we can probably also get a couple contemplation spots. Since these guys are actually doing pretty good on wood, they have about 120, and our geothermal engine is working, so we can unpause both of these lumber mills. And then we do need to think about setting priorities for some of these jobs. This one can be, well, this guy's going to finish, so we can actually remove this pretty quickly. We can lower one of these lumberjack flags to be lower, and they have almost gone all the way over here. Let's set this path up, and then they should be able to construct these dynamites, although we do need to make sure we have some storage. Thankfully, we have some right over here, and then we can store dynamite in one of these warehouses, and then get some other basics set up. Looks like we have a good amount of scrap metal in our main district. We can probably get some scrap metal collectors, and then also process some scrap metal on this side of the river. So we do have quite a few things we can work on in this district, but I do want to be conscientious of planning for future space, because I could just place stuff down willy-nilly. So in the next episode, we're going to be planning where we want to have everything set up. We want to have a good housing center, have some fun activities for them, and then we'll probably focus the production in this area since we have a couple geothermal vents. And then for food, that's probably the biggest thing these guys need to worry about. But I was thinking if we get some zipline stations set up, we can take advantage of these little holes and then get some fluid dumps over here. And all of a sudden we have 3 bots who are unemployed. We are doing much better on planks, although we should try and get those plank stores up even more. We can switch a couple of these jobs to be set to bots, and then we can get maybe another gatherer flag set to bots. And now we actually have some unemployed beavers. We can turn these builders' huts back on, although they might not actually have anything to work on at the moment. And we are so short on food, we have no food left other than berries, but we are working to expand our planting zone. And for now we can get some carrots since those are some of the quicker crops. And since we are running so short on food, we're going to block this area off and then replace one of these levees with the sluice. We'll have that close above a certain contamination level. Ooh, I thought this whole thing was one level higher, so I guess the water won't be able to flood in through here. If we place down a bunch of dynamite, then we could lower this, and then we should have some additional irrigation spreading out through here. Unfortunately, it looks like we are running a bit short on explosives. And we are making bots left and right, so we have a couple who are unemployed once again. I think we can toss them into this job, and we did not have to use any science to unlock that. Although it does seem like we've pretty much picked all the crops we can. There's a few potatoes here and there. Maybe we switch this farmhouse to be bots instead. So we are running a little bit short on power since we have the windmills that are not turning. And then since we had some unemployed beavers in this district, I turned on a few of the inventors huts. So now we're doing great on science. We have 2.8 thousand. We can get the 5x1 overhang unlocked. And then we can start working on constructing those. And also unlock the gravity battery. Although we won't be able to construct gravity batteries on the outside unless we get up there. So we'll have to work around a little bit differently. But if we set up a few stairs, then they should be able to reach the end of this, and then we can start placing down gravity batteries. It looks like we have a couple unemployed bots and beavers, but we're going to focus on that in the next episode. And what the heck, why are they not working on this gravity battery, but they're constructing this one? That don't make a whole lot of sense. Looks like we'll need to have to actually pause this one for now. They should be able to reach this, so it looks like they are now working on it. But we went through a lot in today's episode. We are starting to work on these gravity batteries, which are going to be very important during the droughts. We also expanded our water wheels, and then most importantly, we got a second district up and running. They are on the path towards self-sufficiency. They're chopping down trees and then also producing some materials. Soon they'll be able to pump some water out of here, and then hopefully also get some food set up soon. If you enjoyed today's video, please hit that like button. It really does mean a lot to me, and it helps the channel out tremendously. And with that, we will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.